here to discuss an interesting panel on, on the topic of reconstruction, as we understand. This week is the IMF World Bank meetings, spring meetings, which is a lot about macro-financial stability, but also about reconstruction. And it's less about military support, but believe me, on meetings, including those of you who have not read this year World Economic Outlook, which was just published by IMF. I'm from IMF, so you can read it. You will see probably the first time in this document, the two chapters are about the defense spendings, which is the first time in IMF history, but this is coming definitely first, when it was planned, it was coming more from the Russia's war in Ukraine, and therefore the results were for Europe, for a lot of the increasing the fiscal spendings in Europe, but now we have a war in the Middle East as well. But this is also about the reconstruction. And if you look at the World Bank Rapid Damage Need Assessment, which already the fifth version, which has been issued in February, you see that out of $588 billion of reconstruction needs, the biggest portion, if you look inside, is linked with rebuilding of regional part, the cities, the housing, the educational facilities, medical facilities, and which just supports the concept that in reality the reconstruction is very much local. It's not in Kiev. Reconstruction is in the cities on the southeast, but also it's in the west of Ukraine, in the central part of Ukraine. There's a lot of to be done in different parts of Ukraine. Again, if you have not read the report, please do it. It's very rich with data, with regional analysis, industry analysis, and it shows also damages, shows the needs, the losses. And but as I said, the majority of this is local. Sorry, something allergic here. Yeah, and I want to discuss today the issues of this local reconstruction, the building new cities and reconstructing the old cities. And if I may start with one question, to all three panelists, and only Davide was last year from free, on the last year panel. Who was in last April on the panel which I was moderating? Who of you? It's clear. So you remember which first question I asked last time? There was that time was Marchenko, Sergei Marchenko, Minister of Finance. There was a governor of National Bank, also Davide, and there were, I think, the Pierre Helbern was there, the French envoy. So I asked, if you would have $100 billion in your hands, how would you invest in Ukraine? Okay, we are 1 year later. Money is not coming yet. So let me ask not 100 billion, but 10. I hope next year I will not need to ask one. Okay? Let's start with 10. So if $10 billion would be in your hands, how would you spend it? How would you invest it in reconstruction of Ukraine? Who wants to start first? Davide, you were last time, so let's see how you changed. Okay, I remember what you were telling last time.
Maybe with 10 billion is a bit less ambitious. But let me say, first of all, thank you. Thanks for
I already like when
here.
People say 10 billion is less ambitious. Okay.
Thank you for having me here to Ukraine House once again. I want to say that it's very fascinating to debate different models of reconstruction. This is a creative part of my job. Architectural reconstruction diplomacy is very much connected to people, to the well-being of people, to people who have suffered because of the conflict, and I think that Italy can bring to this discussion a lot of experience. We had a lot of experience with human-made natural disasters in the 20th centuries. We rebuild many times our countries. We have a principle which emerged from this tradition, which is to rebuild come era, dove era, how it was, where it was, which means respecting historical identity, the community memory, cultural continuity while restoring functionality, and this is very important when we discuss about the rebuilding of Ukraine, when we talk about building back better. This should be taken into account. On this basis, Italy works, for example, for the restoration of the cultural heritage of Ukraine, which is very much connected to cultural identity, and cultural identity is very important for resilience. And having said that, you can understand how much we think it is important to start when we discuss rebuilding Ukraine from the local dimension, the importance of rebuilding cities and of reconstruction. And I'm coming to the question, to the 10 billion question of rebuilding a misura d'uomo, a human-scale, self-sustainable communities. Rebuilding should not be just opposing layers of reconstruction, energy on the one side, infrastructures, housing, and then to find out that everything is disconnected, but we should try to rebuild sustainable cities, small cities, maybe with an investment cycle of some 10 years in order for them to represent communities which can be a magnet, which can re-attract people to live in Ukraine. And also to develop a middle class, which is a guarantee for prosperity, for progress and growth. Having said that, coming to the 10 billion questions earmarked for Ukraine's recovery, I think that they should be mostly allocated for local reconstruction, that this is extremely important. The World Bank, for example, in the RDNA 5 said very clearly that recovery in Ukraine is something which should be deeply local. So my proposed allocation could be, for example, a big chunk of this 10 billion, 50-60% on integrated rebuilding of districts and medium-sized city, not just for repairing buildings, individual buildings, but redesigning housing, schools, water, energy networks, mobility, public spaces, in order to create what I said earlier, a functioning urban space. Then a part should go on decentralized energy resilience, including microgrids, renewables, storages at city level, because energy vulnerability remains one of the biggest threats for economic recovery. A part for local transport connectivity, of course, and another part maybe for projects which are a bit more strategic, new cities, larger scale, integrated restoration areas, projects where you can look forward, you can really build back better. And I mean, why this focus? Because this 10 billion must act as a catalyst for private investment. This is very important for having people returning to Ukrainian cities, for having business investing in the reconstruction, because purely centralized reconstruction wouldn't work. Tends to be slowly, tend to be a bit bureaucratic, poorly adapted to local realities. And because what we've done, maybe I'll say something later at the Ukrainian recovery conferences, for example, show to us that it is much better an approach which we start from the communities, better a bottom-up approach.
Thanks, Davide. And when you said about like decentralized energy, local transport connectivity, local reconstruction, looked like you were today on the meeting of Prime Minister. Yes, because we discussed there as well. Is yesterday economy of the future and Christian, Norway. Your view? No, 10 billion.
Thanks very much. I will start in by saying something else. I studied in the United States once upon a time, and then we were sat down to read George Kennan's long telegram of February 1946. It tells the true story about then Soviet Union, now the Russian Federation. Everyone here has read the long telegram, of course. But if it should happen to be that there is someone out there who has not read the long telegram, well, then that's the way to learn everything you need to know about the Russian Federation. Second, what happened, many years ago, but particularly then more than 4 years ago, was one of the most blatant breaches of international law we've seen for a while. Davide and I, we are both here. We are all here for IMF and World Bank spring meetings. One of the top agenda points, in my opinion, should still be Ukraine. But now we have to compete out there in the real world with a number of other issues that I don't have to tell you all about. Norway happens to be the largest donor to Ukraine per capita in the world. We are the largest contributor to the Pearl Initiative. Does everyone know what the Pearl Initiative is? That is the prioritized Ukrainian requirements list, which is it's an amazing concept, right? We donor countries, we pay American industry to deliver American weaponry to Ukraine. So, you American taxpayers out there, are there any American taxpayers here? Well, anyway, you can be, yes, exactly, one, right, two. You can be pretty pleased with that one. But anyway, that is pretty important, and we will continue to do so. Well, to the question then. I would also rephrase it somewhere. We know that capital or money coming from donor countries or from the World Bank, and even macroeconomic support from the IMF, that will not suffice to rebuild Ukraine in any way. What does that mean? The Ukrainian government and the Rada, the Ukrainian National Assembly, they have got a heck of a lot to do in order to make sure that reforms are taking place, and that means that Ukrainian law should be compatible with EU rules and regulations, in order to mobilize private capital. And without that private capital, well, there will be no new cities.
We will discuss this, later. The private capital, which is for sure is one of the important things. And again, thanks for all you personally doing and what Norway is doing. We discussed it already. Oksana.
Well, first of all, thank you, Vlad, and thank you to my both co-panelists for your tireless efforts and for your leadership and attention to Ukraine reconstruction, but also to Ukraine defense following the unprovoked re-aggression, because it's been already 12 years since we are fighting for our survival. Now, that's an interesting question, and I was thinking, what would I say? Like, where would I spend 10 billion?
Not as a Minister of Finance, because Minister of Finance, I know what you would do.
Exactly, pending that it's not earmarked for something, and I probably would give different answers if I were Minister of Finance, as I was before, or when I was in private equity, I probably would go into, let's create a good diversified portfolio, using this 10 billion, because it is a sizable amount of resources to think. But now again, I'm having another hat now as part of the team of the New City Initiative, and Victoria Troitska, who's here with us, is the director of this initiative at Ukraine House. So I think if I had 10 billion, if the 10 billion were available to me now, I would spend it in a very simple way. I would take some percentage, probably 10. Maybe a little bit more, and I would spend it regardless of the reconstruction things that I will be talking on education and culture, because I believe this is such an important element of who we are as Ukrainians, and this is so important for the future reconstruction to keep education and culture in focus. The rest I would split in two. Half I would invest into amazing Ukrainian defense capabilities, probably amazing companies like Skyfall and others, because again, we have to be safe, and this is one of the key factors of securing future reconstruction. Safety is very important. The rest I would spend to actually jumpstart the construction of the new city in Ukraine. And that would be sufficient in order to do what actually we envision to do with Nowe Misto. Maybe not very creatively, but very self-explanatory. In Ukrainian, Nowe Misto means new city. To build a city for 100,000 residents, which would be have the new level of safety. It would be green, it would be inclusive, it would be energy efficient. It would be not just a pilot project of reconstruction, but also a pilot, and that's where I circle back to what my colleague said, a pilot project of European integration, a first city which would completely embrace and actually leapfrog and from the very beginning do ahead of schedule all the European integration reforms that we need to do to show that by doing that you actually can be a very attractive city for its residents, for business, and I'm sure business would come to that city because again we have to rebuild a lot, we have to repair a lot, we have to, but I really like the word recovery. Not just rebuild the physical things, not just reconstruct what was deconstructed, destroyed, or not constructed properly, but actually heal, build back better, as the previous administration used here, or create something that is going to have a new quality in itself and will be an example of the new Ukraine, which is European, resilient, but also an example of how the private capital together with other resources can do it better and deliver to people better.
Thanks, Oksana. You said you word recovery, and Davide, you are, master of the house organizing the URC last year, in Rome, which was a success, definitely a success story. And we are preparing for Polish conference in Gdańsk. So can you share with those who have not been there, who has been on the conference last year? Yeah, Andy was, Victoria, so Sophia, a few people. So can you share what you have as some kind of summary? What kind of lessons or what kind of outcomes came there, not only from government to government support, which was a big part of that, but you organized a lot on the local level. There was a lot of municipalities, there was a big floor of different municipalities. So what you can tell, building about reconstruction cities or building new?
Okay, thank you. I'm very happy that so many people were able to join us in Rome at the conference and especially to enter the premises of the conference. I say that since 2022, since the large-scale invasions, the conference became the main mechanism for international community for supporting Ukraine to mobilize financial, technical, and political support. We draw upon the previous conference. This exercise actually started in 2017. The name was Ukraine Reform Conference. So we kept the abbreviation, the URC. The Lugano conference in 2022 was able to lay out the principles of the reconstruction under the leadership of the Ukrainian governments, of course, ownership, very strong ownership, transparency, good governance, rule of law, and the long-term sustainability of the reconstruction. Then the London conference the next year added the business dimension. We had a very strong participation of business. There was a document signed by companies, large companies, called the Business Compact. More than 600 companies committed to participate in the reconstruction of Ukraine. In the Berlin conference 2024, we had for the first time the local and regional dimension introduced in the URC. The message was that the recovery is not only a matter of national policies, not only a national policy issue, but it's a deeply territorial process. And then with our conference in Rome, the URC, in last July, the local dimension was placed at the real core of the reconstruction efforts. Local authorities became not only the beneficiary and the implementers of the reconstruction, but the real strategic actors for the reconstruction. I think the main lessons are, first of all, the empowerment of local government and institutional capacity at the local level. The conference called for the empowerment of municipalities, so Cromadas, starting from the very successful decentralization reform in Ukraine, so that the local authorities could become the core architects of recovery. There was a strong accent on capacity building. Since the reconstruction has to go through local authorities, we need to empower the local authorities' capacity. They must be equipped to meet EU standards, so the importance of training, access to funds, technical assistance, growth in capacity. The third point was, I think, a relation between transparency and the digital systems like the DREAM platform, the ProZorro. The message of the conference was need to be used also at the local level. The same goes, for example, for the reform of the public investment management and single project pipelines. We saw the Ukrainian government moving from a national single project pipelines to many regional, local single project pipelines, which is very important. Another lesson was how relevant is the growth of partnership, of twinnings with European municipalities, international cities, how important is that this cooperation becomes operational. And this is, I must say, beneficial in both directions. The local Ukrainian local authorities have to learn lessons from European cities, but at the same time, our cities have a benefit in learning how resilient and how autonomous the Ukrainian municipalities have become. So all these messages contributed to bring a very strong emphasis on the relevance of local communities, the local authorities in the reconstruction, and the expectation is that to see this message also coming from the conference in Dansk.
For me, it's always difficult, to moderate the panels. I'm usually invited to speak in front of friends, So these are 3 friends with whom we are in a dialogue for years. And so I was moderating one of the panels on URC also, where it was discussed. There was also the leadership of Lombardia, but also there was a person, who spoke about Aquila, after earthquake, But also you mentioned DREAM, and I wanted to, on your first intervention, I wanted to make a link on that, because you said that the reconstruction should be integrated districts, and this is exactly where I was as one of the persons who was also behind the DREAM, discussing with Viktor Stule and the team, on that specific project. I was saying that their system, with all the super successful, launch, etc., it does not resolve the issue of integrated districts, because there the school or the house is an individual objects which require reconstruction, and you don't see the full, like if you want to rebuild the district. But Oksana, I mean, about there is a URC in Gdańsk, and you now heard from Davide about the local dimension somehow. If you would present it, in the conference, how it's easy when there is a Trostinets or Voznesensk, other cities, or European, or Bucha, to present themselves. How would you present these as competing for money? Because you need to answer, both to investors and partners. Why would you build a new city and not to rebuild others?
That's a valid question, and how we will present Nova City in Gdańsk, I think we just have to wait a little bit and see. So I invite everyone to join the Gdańsk URC, and when you are there, look for the Nova City place, whatever it's going to be, and visit it. But honestly, when we talk about rebuilding, revival, reinvention, we have to ask the question, what issues or what problems are we trying to resolve? Clearly, Ukraine, before the war started in 2014, and especially the full-fledged invasion, before that, Ukraine did not realize its full potential. I mean, we know Ukraine has much bigger potential to be a prosperous country, to be fast-growing company, to be innovative company, and we lacked investments. And we can, it can be another conference to discuss what was the reason. Was it the lack of time to develop after the Soviet Union broke down and we became independent? Was it lack of reforms? Was it lack of awareness globally about how important Ukraine is and how capable Ukraine is? I mean, is it all of the above? But nevertheless, Ukraine could have used much more, both private, institutional, and all other types of capital to develop and be a great place for partnerships and development. Now, after the war started, there is lots of destruction. We heard the numbers from the RDNA report, and we have right now 6 to 7 million people outside of Ukraine. Now, the reality on the ground, as much as we all want Ukraine to win, and we all work day and night, and we still think this should be our goal, full victory of Ukraine, full restoration of our territorial integrity and sovereignty, we don't know where and how soon we will end up where we need to be, and there are still many cities which are under Russian occupation. This is, unfortunately, a horrible fact, and there are cities which are destroyed. Bakhmut, Mariinka, these cities that we knew, vibrant cities, do not exist anymore. So, yes, we need to reconstruct the existing cities, yet we need to repair what has been destroyed, like tonight in Odessa or yesterday in Kiev or every day when Russia attacks us, because it's easier to rebuild right away for people to continue living than to wait for another very difficult winter. But we definitely need to build new cities. It's evident now. In order to get people to come back, and we are in touch with these communities, we do a lot of research in Poland, we know what they need in order to come back. What they need is housing and safety, and again, not the end of the war is safety, but safety, schools for kids and everything else. We cannot provide it to all of them in the existing towns and cities. So that is a clear need to build something new. But second, we need to build something inspiring too. And not to mention that existing cities are not inspiring. I mean, I love Kiev, I love Lviv, I love Odessa. There are so many places in Ukraine to like and visit and maybe live there. But just imagine that we can build something from scratch, taking into account what we already know, and just leapfrog. Just like Ukrainian banking system, which still is the fastest payment system, the most innovative ones, because we lost a lot of time. But then when we built it in 91, we didn't just start it where we were disrupted 60 years before that, but we did what is on the market new. So here, building something new, we can actually, in energy, in maybe nuclear SMRs and other technologies, green approaches, something that unfortunately was not available 100 years ago, 50 years ago. Just do it the way we think is the way to build for the next 100 years. Do it in Ukraine, test it in Ukraine. Also, in a good sense, use that new city as a lab for all the ideas that we have, and we cannot test them in existing cities, because when something works, you do not tear it down in order to improve it right away. But if you build in the field from scratch, from the people you want to attract, you can try the most brave ideas that otherwise you will not be able. And then, because in the city, as some of you know, we want to have a country-specific district. We have to have the Norway district, Italian district, American district. Then we can take the best of the experience from these countries, together, of course, with the best food or the clean streets, and whatever the best characteristics of these nations we all know, and also bring them closer to Ukraine, and in a way to show that Ukrainians are Europeans, Europe is in Ukraine, and we together can. So definitely repair whatever we can repair, but I think the need to build new villages and cities is long overdue. We have to start doing it, and we will need more than 10 cities like that in Ukraine.
Thanks. By the way, Christian, if you don't agree, for example, you please say it. But I have another question to you, just to continue. But you can for sure disagree with that. But Norway, as you said, is one of the biggest, supporters of Ukraine, not only per capita. You're visible. We discussed it today with your minister. And the issue is that, as Davide said before, and Oksana said first, that she would invest first in education and culture. This is not only about buildings. It's much bigger. It's much bigger about the fabric of the city, because we will have to deal with the trauma. We will have to deal with reconciliation between people, those who left the country, who stayed, who were on the occupation or who were not, who was in the army, who was not. There will be a lot of the investment on the human capital, and so how to use reconstruction, I would say, no matter it's new cities or old cities, but still, as Davide said, it's a lot on the local level. It's on the ground. It's not somewhere in the cabinets on Gruszewska or on Bankova or Institutska. It's on the ground in the cities, how to make this reconstruction process, which could be also healing people, healing the trauma of the war, and for people to be ready to come back, and not only ready, but also be interested and be incentivized, and to have an opportunity when they come back.
Well, Vlad, you summed it up beautifully. These are all challenges. We see them every day, and we will certainly see them come peace, or at least an armistice. I'll revert to it in a second. You started out, ma'am, by saying that investments should be flowing in. Well, peace or an armistice would be good. Even as important would be a stable legal structure and the rule of law. Full stop. I would like to make a comment before I return to your question, Vlad. I would make a comment on the Ukraine Recovery Conference last year, and thanks very much, Davide, to you and your government for organizing that grandiose event. I had my minister promise me that Norway will never host such an enormous event. I'm not quite sure if she listened. But anyway, fantastic. I will add one of the important things about URC, be that in London, Berlin, Rome, or this year in Gdansk, is that senior people, come together, and everyone would like to keep up with the Joneses. We do that in the Nordic countries all the time. If the Swedish minister says something, you will be damn sure that the Norwegian minister would like to equal that what the Swedish minister has just said. That this is fine. This is excellent. This is also one of the ambitions of a URC, that ministers should come together and they should compete in the best sense of the word in order to understand and to give more and to continue support to Ukraine. And the unfortunate thing is that there are all too few states and nations out there that contribute enough. And that goes even for G7 countries. I will not now touch upon the United States. It is fine, we are proud that Norway could be among the leaders, but it's a bad thing that a nation of 5.5 million people should be in the lead. Others should be in the lead, and I'm not criticizing anyone in particular, but more people should step up. Well, third, around the city of Verdun, there are square kilometers upon square kilometers of no man's zone. It's basically sealed off. 108 years since the end of World War I. It is an area filled with mines, with unexploded devices, a sanctuary, basically. One of the many things I've learned from you, Vlad, is that we will have to face, or the Ukrainian people will have to face, the fact that one cannot necessarily move back to many of the areas where people used to live. And perhaps many cities too will be like the precincts of Verdun. You can never move back because of the very sad story of mines, unexploded, blah, 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 unfortunately. And that might be a tough conclusion and a tough story for the Ukrainian government to bring forward. However, unfortunately, it happened after World War I, and it will probably happen again. And that is a challenge when it comes to new cities. And you pointed out, Davide, which I'm totally agreeing with, and Italy is wonderful at that, to build local societies upon sort of a cultural structure. But here, perhaps we will have to look at the fact that it might not necessarily be possible. So,
yeah, you are right, and we are here not politicians, so is to be pragmatic. You need to build the country. You need to build to demonstrate examples, and again, I agree with Oksana. It doesn't mean that you don't need to rebuild. There is a huge job to be done in Kharkiv. The 1/4 of the town is under attacks. When you come to Kiev, to one district at least, I will not mention it, and I brought there the IMF team, including Kristalina, and they saw, the results there. Andy can tell also much about, some American fast food restaurants in that district who are very resilient to demonstrate how to work. 6th time, reopening there, and I was saying even about that on the board of IMF, and so all of this is important, and again, we agreed that reconstruction is local. We understand that, it will require different solutions, rebuilding, building as it was, as Davide said, as Italian concept, for sure building human-centric, and dealing with all these trauma and healing the population. But again, what should we do next? Davide. So if, the practically, what would you advise to do, now practically, on reconstruction? You do a lot, because you're acting, but let's be, next 12 to 24 months, what should be done, by the government or by locals or by business in order to move forward? Because, time flies, and I remember when we organized the first reconstruction forum in London, in London School of Economics in May 2022, some international partners were saying that reconstruction will be only after the war finishes. And a lot of Ukrainians say, no, it should not be. And actually it's not, because there is ongoing reconstruction, maybe not so big, but the war can continue, and people still need to live somewhere. You need to build business. We need to build transport, new solutions, resilient solutions. Even maybe we need to live longer for that. So what would be your advice?
I reply to you, Vlad, but I want to say something about what Christian said about contributions. Point taken. Of course, we all need to have a serious reflections on bilateral, multilateral contributions. One of the messages that we are sending is that we would expect a fairer participation from G7 countries and like-minded countries to the support of Ukraine. It's clear that the European Union is doing the heavy lifting. At the same time, perhaps we should try to enlarge a bit the area of support for Ukraine. I remember at the beginning of the conflict there was President Zelensky 10-point peace plan that tried to reach out to the global south. That's what we also try to do by enlarging the participation in the Ukraine Recovery Conference to a number of countries which were not usually supporters of Ukraine. We saw, by the way, the present, we haven't talked about the war in the Middle East. We saw it as, of course, a bit as a distraction to the one end, reasoning in terms of the Ukrainian conflict. On the other, this is a very big opportunity. For example, we watch with interest the trip that President Zelensky made in the Gulf countries and in Damascus. But for sure, enlarging the contributions is something we should reflect upon. What we can do, we can contribute in many different aspects. From the business point of view, of course, we can bring to Ukraine a lot of expertise, a lot of experience. We can close a partnership. We need to increase the level of investments into Ukraine. We're working on that. This Ukraine Recovery Conference, especially the one in Rome, establish a number of investing.
You also organized a big conference in Verona, I remember.
And the risk in investment. The conference in Verona was about the participation of the local dimension in the reconstruction. Here, something very interesting is about the participation of municipalized companies on public-private partnership. One thing that we are watching with a lot of attention is this proposition from the Ministry of Community and Territory about 30 concessional projects that could be implemented with the collaboration of partners. So this is relevant. One thing, going back to the local dimension, of course, is the contribution of twinnings. Italian local authorities have a very strong operational experience. We close in Rome a number of twinnings, for example, between your city, Odessa, and Venice, based on a long-standing historical tie. This is one. The cultural heritage is another dimension in which we can make a lot of progress. We are committed in restoring the cultural heritage of the city of Odessa. There is a program of the Italian cooperation which is worth 100 million euro. So these are two directions of work. Another one, in more general terms, is talking about local authorities to decentralize access to finance. This is the further step that we need to do. Local authorities should become able to decide independently how to invest, how to propose investment, and they should have a capacity to access financing, including from international financial institutions. So these are a number of suggestions, including, for example, the one of revising the patronage. Patronage did not always work very well, so maybe we could have different modalities: the participation of regions, cities, the central government, the partner countries, international banks, for example. We should a bit revise this modality.
Yeah, thanks. I remember, speaking about the twinning cities, I remember 23 years ago, I was developing a project in Odessa and Genova, for example, and exactly on the logic of twinning city. Christian, what need to be done, in the next 18, 24 months in order to have a, I would say, let's be very frank, more money, faster reconstruction, especially on the local level?
Excellent.
Rule of law is clear.
Yeah, rule of law we already talked about twice. Fine. What business tells us is that, well, money is fine, ministers talking, fine, but we need to have insurance arrangements in place. With the relevant insurance arrangements in place, we can do business even before there is any peace or armistice agreement. So who will be dealing with this stuff? One of the reasons why we're here would be the World Bank, something called MIGA, Multilateral Investment Guarantee Agency. They offer such insurance arrangements. So does also the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development. That's one thing. Then you will have the DFIs, Development Finance Institutions, which are excellent tools to assist private business in complicated areas around the world. In a parenthesis, since we are here, I've been attending World Bank meetings for 15 years. And let's not forget that there are many other countries out there in what used to be known as the Third World and the Global South, where we are competing for money. It's not necessarily so that Ukraine is the only problem in town. Well, anyway, end of parenthesis. So these development finance institutions are excellent tools in order to promote business in places which are complicated. So a combination of risk insurance, development finance institutions, and also risk takers across the board That would at least be part of the answer to your question.
Thanks. It's not a good part of the answer to the question, unfortunately, because if you speak about the war insurance, it's nice. MIGA can provide, and they are very good that they're providing it. $588 billion reconstruction, majority should be private sector. $250 million of war insurance, from MIGA.
Unfortunately,
where shall we take? The world is not ready, for this war, for one war.
Unfortunately, I know that.
Yeah. Speaking about DFCs, I spent a lot of time this week also with IFC and other DFI. We have a Ukraine-US partnership, which is good. They are telling about the new projects they're planning to do. There was a meeting of the Prime Minister also with DFC this week. But I'm sure people like Misha Harenko is my friend, legal department, legal company. They would love to have much more deals, in Ukraine for reconstruction. So Oksana, speaking about for the next steps, how to make the projects like building new city bankable, and because as I said, and with Christian and Davide said, and we discussed it in the other meetings these days, there is no $588 billion public money. But also, when I asked $10 billion before, I didn't mean that somebody will come and give $10 billion, for this. This will be still money, I'm meaning like a pool of money. It will be private sector money, investments, which, by the way, don't come now, So how to make, your project as bankable in order to be able to attract this money, maybe with some support of governments, but majority of the private sector, and for sure DFIs, IFIs. Thanks.
Well, let me answer this question for Ukraine and for Norway City as a separate project, because I think it's all interconnected. So for Ukrainian reconstruction to be successful, it's one of those questions like in high school when you have a question and sometimes there is a right answer and sometimes the right answer is all of the above. And this is one of the all of the above questions. So everyone has to do his or her part and do it faster and do it more in order to be able to rebuild Ukraine. We have to come together faster and defend Ukraine, because by defending Ukraine, we're defending Europe. And frankly, we have to be honest. Without security arrangement of some sort, the one that we all trust, not a ceasefire that will be a ceasefire where we all know that tomorrow Putin will attack again, will not motivate private or public or any type of business to scale their investments into Ukraine, and that's what we need in order to rebuild Ukraine. So, first, of course, is work and do everything we can. And I know that Christian, when he said that some countries have to do more, probably did not mean Italy. We know these countries that we would like to do more and rejoin the family, the transatlantic family, and actually put a decisive end to this aggression and send a resounding signal that Europe in general and transatlantic community of the same values is a safe place. That's number one. Second, there is a task there for everyone. DFIs have to remember that they are development financial institutions. They should not compete with the private sector. They should not take the best of the best, not only in Ukraine, but in other countries where they work. They should educate, they should risk more, and they should be the transitional capital that actually take more risk, transforms businesses, and bring other capital together with them. Governments should rethink their way and their approach, and I keep telling it at every event now, how they deal with businesses and what they are willing to do to support their businesses. So Italian government should support Italian business and make them more eager to invest both in Italy but in Ukraine. American business definitely should be behind, so use the instruments that they need in order to do that. Citizens should do more, businesses should do more, everyone should do more. What does it mean for the project which I'm talking about, the new city, the Nowe Misto, to be built in Ukraine? Because I think it's such a telling example of how all of that can come together and show that it's difficult, as Christian said. Some things are impossible, but we also have a saying in Ukrainian, it's impossible until it's done. And I think companies like Skyfall, by inventing vampire drones, sometimes show that, it's impossible. In 2022, a lot of people would say it's impossible, but now we see it on the battlefield and elsewhere. So what is the role there for everyone? First of all, we will present it at URC, and the plan for the next week is to gather the like-minded countries who would say, we would support it. We want a pilot project of reconstruction and European integration. We want the pilot project where we cannot tell people how reforms work, but show how reform works. We want a clean, nice city with excellent tax service, with great police, with clean streets, with drones delivering everything, with the ring road around the city. We want to do it, and we want to show others that it's possible to do it. We are not asking actually for state contributions into the city. All we ask from the country is support your business that would want to be residents there. And I'm sure that when you have a doable idea, because if you ask businesses, and I'm sure we heard it in Italy during URC, I know we heard it in Berlin, we heard it in other URC conferences, the interest after large strategic presentations is big. Businesses come and say, this is exciting, I want to put Ukraine on my investment map, I want to do something. And the same businesses come back the next year to the conference and complain they did not find enough bankable projects in the places where they would trust that there is business environment, there is good investment climate, and there is a contact they can call and know that they will help them to resolve their issues and help them find solutions, from the access to the local grid, to the land issues, to talking to the local communities. We have, thanks to decentralization, some capable local leaders, but not yet everywhere. So in this one sample pilot project in the city that we will build from scratch, we can actually gather all those who want to move back and are looking for the place to move back. All those residents of Dia City, virtual city, that want to expand physically and are looking for a place to do. All those companies on the ground which have lost their production, and they don't want to rebuild back in Kherson Oblast or Mykolaiv Oblast yet, because it's under constant attack, but they want to build their facilities somewhere, and they want a predictable and conditions. All those banks that are ready to expand, and they will open their bank branches there. So it's essentially our task with the new city is to do the largest project management operation in Ukraine, to put together the puzzle of the demand that is already there in business, in people, in IFIs, in government, in local communities, and just realize it in one place for 100,000 people, which would not only be doable, even though it's impossible and it seems to be impossible now, but will also inspire others to build the city number 2 and city number 3. And I think if we do it in Ukraine, we will also facilitate the construction of the new cities in Europe. We know how many, just recently the new Dutch Prime Minister, that was part of his agenda when he ran. I know Italy is at the forefront of actually planning and building not completely new cities, but new districts, and you can also call them new towns. And I know we need to build more in Europe in general, but again, it's very difficult to do that where everything works well. So when we do it in Ukraine, I'm sure it's going to be a learning experience and an inspiration which we can replicate not just in Ukraine.
We started 5 minutes later, but we still need to try to finish in time. So, Christian, you wanted to comment, but when you comment, I want also you answer also my question in the end. And we don't have much time for that, for 3 of you. What would you need where you would need to be helped to do what you want in Ukraine?
Excellent. One of the jobs that David and I have would also be to ask the more uncomfortable questions. Say, Ukrainian owned resources, the tax base, is that being utilized in a proper way? The answer might be to that, no. There would still be things to be done in Ukraine in bringing in own resources. In my country, we have almost 100,000 Ukrainian citizens. Many of them, men of military age. Why shouldn't they be basically ordered by the Ukrainian government to come home again? We welcome them in Norway. However, now all of them are getting only temporary passes to stay there because they should leave back home. How does that one apply? And those questions will have to be attended to before we get out to the Gulf countries or to Brazil and India and others in order to step in. Well, what will be the demands? We've already touched about many of them, the rule of law, etc. We have talked about the utilizing instruments such as MIGA and development finance institutions, amiss that they are in so many areas. But I think the single most important thing would be rules and regulations which are EU compatible. Thank you.
Thanks. When we start speaking about the tax base, I said we didn't agree on that because you go to IMF discussion, and I just spent all these days on IMF on tax base. Oksana mentioned before the Skyfall, the company,
Yes.
The vampire drones, and Kristalina Georgieva used the analog. Saying that how you build new drones, you need to build new institutions, So I would say we need to try to build new cities as we try to, because it's never been done. But Christian, answering your question, or rhetoric question, or maybe public question, and again, I'm not probably in the position to answer this also as a moderator, but let's imagine tomorrow Ukraine is a member of European Union, and Ukrainians can live being in the family where they want. And where I would slightly disagree with you with one word which you used when Ukrainian government to order Ukrainian people to come back, I would say how Ukrainian government can incentivize. This would be a great, and again, for me still, reconstruction is a huge opportunity because it's jobs, is also, and hopefully people like Oksana will be able to build the city that will be more opportunity and to be look like Copenhagen part, at least maybe district, or Oslo, or the Helsinki, and we can be to or Amsterdam, Davide. Yeah.
Okay, let me start. I wanted to answer a bit to what Oksana said about the business participation in the reconstruction. We have formed in Italy a large group of business companies, business associations interested in the reconstruction of Ukraine. There are 250 of them. We sit in front of them in a video conference every month and a half. We see there is a lot of enthusiasm. There is no fatigue. There are a lot of questions. At the same time, it's very difficult to overcome this gap which prevent them from investing into Ukraine. It's very much different from companies which are already in Ukraine, which are continuing to invest. They stay a bit at the window. Of course, if you ask entrepreneurs what is the single measure that would allow them to change their attitude and come to invest is the end of the conflict. But of course, we need to work on it. We need to provide instruments to them. One of them is the role of FIs. I'm very much in agreement with that. I'm also thankful to Oksana. She suggested I'm meeting them tonight at the Italian embassy, so she suggested a number of arguments that I can use in order for them to be more courageous. The risk, the educational role that they should play. We need to start not only to work on resilience. We need to start recovery, reconstruction even now. One of the most promising sectors that we are watching at the moment is the dual use, the industrial Ramstein, which we are going to dedicate a number of events in the next days and weeks, including the Dansk conference. There is a strong role for the FIs. We have very important instruments. One of these is the second pillar of the Ukraine facility. So this is the road we have ahead. Beyond that, maybe we should start a reflection on broader reflection, deeper reflection on the financial and organizational architecture of the reconstruction to see whether we can, at a certain point when the real reconstruction will start, establish something that will close the gap between the funding of the reconstruction and the participation of business to the recovery of Ukraine.
And thanks for your today meeting, which you organized in the Italian embassy for discussion already this, and I hope we will continue this summer to discuss this as well. Oksana, you're the last, but definitely not least the speaker here. So what you would need, where you need help, and maybe some ending words for the panel.
Well, I definitely will need Christian and Davide to talk to me a little bit more and then say resounding yes to the new city, because I cannot imagine it without Italian or Norwegian regions, districts in it. But throughout the day we were discussing a lot of different subjects, and I think it's very important to keep Ukraine in focus, first and foremost. I mean, for all of us who do it on a daily basis, it seems like, of course, I mean, this is the biggest war in Europe. This is the danger for all of us. But, when you travel to the United States, when you travel globally, you understand that it's not the case everywhere. So keeping Ukraine in focus, not just our reconstruction, but in general, keeping transatlantic unity in focus is very important. And we have to, that needs to be done continuously in order to be able to stay the course and get to the victory. But second, again, we just have to double down on everything that works. And it means double down on investments, double down on increasing the productivity, double down on European integration. And our rules in Ukraine, I would even dare to say, should not be European Union compatible. They should be European rules. And because this is what Ukrainian people also demand from Ukrainian government. And we should just understand that we don't have any other choice than to get to success, whether it's in building the new cities, repairing the existing cities, winning the war. We just have to help each other. And yes, there are sometimes difficult issues and we have to discuss them, and sometimes we would disagree, but we have to move forward, and every day have to bring us closer to that goal. So lots of work ahead of us. It would be great to have those 10 billion with which you started the conversation, actually. Then we could go into the implementation phase on so many of the projects that we are, but I'm sure that in building the new city or in recovery of Ukraine, it's not the money that is going to be the biggest problem. And if we solve other issues that we are discussing here, the money will come. Because, there is lots of plausible investors outside who are looking for great opportunities. We just have to eliminate all those obstacles, unfortunately, which still exist internally, externally, and join our forces together in order to be able to do it.
Thanks. And Davide, you mentioned that about the Gulf and the war in the Middle East. And I should be very frank, this dominated discussion on 19th Street today, on both sides of 19th Street, as we say. And today, during the G20 meeting, it was also, dominating as a topic. So I'm really thankful for Ukraine House, for Sofia, for the team, for Mariana, for Oksana, who organized this to have a full focus on Ukraine. That's why I try to avoid the Gulf and not asking that, because this is about Ukraine. Yes, Ukraine is not isolated. Yes, Ukraine is part of the world. It's part of Europe. And what we discussed today is reconstruction, which is local. And, since it's recorded, my understanding is, I have only one wish, that next year you would report how you spent 10 billion and not only dream how to spend it. Thanks a lot, and see you next year at least. But we'll sure we'll see each other.